Today we'll be looking at personal development for leadership and strategic management. We'll be looking at LO4, learning outcome 4. The focus of this learning outcome is on performance review or performance appraisal. So this should be the last learning outcome, I think. Yep, this is the last learning outcome. And then hopefully we'll be able to do one assignment preparation session. So let's look at performance management. So in organizations, you need to measure performance. You need to measure the organization's performance. You need to measure individuals' performance. As part of this unit, what you're trying to do is to help you develop your personal leadership knowledge and skills. And one of it will be your ability to appraise your performance and improve your performance. So we are looking at how well you do something and how well you hit a standard objective or target. So in this case, we are using an objective to compare. Sometimes you compare with others, how well you do against others, and so on. So performance management benefits both the employee and the organization. For the organization, it helps to measure efficiency, helps to maintain control, helps to find out where things are not going well so you can correct them and improve them, and so on. And where things are going well, you can continue to do so. For the employee, if you give you some useful feedback, you know how well you're doing or not doing, you can look at areas to improve and so on. Right? So you're assessing your performance. For the employee, you can use this for your personal development, which is the idea we are using it in this module. You can use it as part of your skills audit and personal development plans, information you get from your performance appraisals. And obviously, this can lead to higher levels of motivation and satisfaction and engagement as you feel confident with your performance and you're happy with what you're doing. For the organization, it boosts productivity and efficiency, helps develop a skill base among employees, it increases obviously the harmony and mutual trust in the organization. So, what are the benefits of reviewing performance review? One is it helps clarify what your goals are, identify your goals, identify any challenges you may have, identify any strengths or weaknesses you may have, any gaps in performance. That is a difference. A gap is a difference between the target or goal and your actual performance. It obviously will identify gaps in skills and knowledge, so it can be used to therefore influence your training. So when you use it as part of your personal development plan, skills audit, it now leads on to say, okay, to fill this gap, I need this training. So it helps identify what training you need. It obviously improves employee engagement and performance, improves your performance, improves your engagement, especially as you get feedback, positive feedback. It helps you stay committed and motivated. In some organizations, they link performance to reward, what we call PRP, performance-related pay. So you have your basic salary, and in addition to that, you may get a performance bonus. So you may get £5,000 or £2,000 or £1,000 based on if you got excellent performance or outstanding performance or something like that, right? Not all organizations do this, but we see this especially in certain sectors and industries in the private sector. It also helps identify poor performance for improvement, for correction, or in extreme cases you have to exit them and you start them, fire them if they're not performing properly. So Performance management tools are used actually across the employee life cycle. We use them obviously in recruitment. They inform the job description because that will state the kind of performance that's expected. We use them in terms of your induction and orientation to the organization to tell you what will be expected when you start work. We use them in terms of assessing culture fit at recruitment stage. So this is the performance and these are the behaviors we expect. So part of your performance may not be just be the work, but it may be the behaviors you demonstrate, teamwork, leadership, supporting colleagues, and so on and so forth. So those could be part of your performance targets and performance appraisal. And obviously, you will use that some sort of performance tool, selecting between candidates at an interview assessment center, and so on. We obviously use performance management tools when it comes to training and development. We use it to identify the training gap or skill gap that we use to say, okay, this is the kind of training Mr. A needs or Mrs. B needs, right? So we also use it for career progression. It helps to keep a track of where you are and where you need to be in terms of your career, in terms of linking that to your current performance, future expected performance. Performance management tools are also important for employee engagement because, like we said, are closely linked to motivation and engagement. When people are performing very well, they feel very satisfied and happy with themselves. Engagement is high, productivity is high. When for any reason they are underperforming or they are having issues, their motivation and engagement may be low. And then obviously it's part of your HR strategy because individual performance is aligned or linked to organizational performance. So everyone every individual has performance targets, which when they all achieve them builds towards the departmental performance targets, which each department target built into the organization's performance target, which is their way of achieving the strategy for that year. So we have, this whole idea of linking performance to your organizational goals, your HR strategy, and improving communication. So we'll talk about that a bit more, and how performance improves communication between the employee and the line manager, especially, but also others. Because you have to have a performance appraiser every month, every 6 months, or whatever, we have to discuss these performance issues. So, there's been some changes in the performance management landscape across the world, especially in the West. So the traditional performance management was done maybe once a year, once in 6 months. Then we moved towards more regular performance management, move towards ranking systems where we rank performance based on maybe 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5 being excellent and 1 being underperforming. And a lot of this was now linked to bonuses and rewards, like we've mentioned. And then in some cases, especially in organizations like GE, General Electric, and Microsoft, even Yahoo, it was linked to the idea of rank and yank. So after you rank your employees based on their performance, the idea was to reward the 10% best performing employees across the organization, and then fire the bottom 10% performance. So every year, it was leading to a lot of people being fired. But that now we noticed along the way had negative outcomes. People were less likely to work in teams and collaborate with each other if they knew that in this team of 10 people, one of us must be fired. So why should I help you, do your work? When if I do that, then at the end of the day, you may get good performance, I may not, I may be the one fired. So we now saw some sort of negative behavior or unintentional consequences. So what you now see is the big companies like Accenture, Microsoft has stopped doing that rank and yank performance management ranking system. Bigger companies like Accenture, Deloitte, Adobe, BDC even, they've stopped dropping that ranking system of performance management that has been has become the norm. In the past year or two, we see moving more to an informal performance management appraisal system, more ongoing feedback rather than waiting for every 6 months, every 3 months for feedback. We give feedback ongoing, but more casual, more informal, less pressure, and definitely no performance ranking, right? And therefore no rank and yank for those who move from ranking to also yanking or firing employees. So those are the trends you can see in terms of performance management. So what are the kind of targets or performance measures you may have? So some will be based on profitability. So you may be given a target of improving sales or profit or income or revenue by 10% or 5% in the next 6 months, something like that. It may be activity based or quality standard based. You need to produce X number of diesel exhaust to X quality standard in the next 6 months, right? Or productivity, or what's being done, and so on. We also have performance measures that may be comparing you to what your competitors are doing, or linked to the state of the economy, benchmark against your closest rivals or other key points in the industry, and the objectives of stakeholders. So, for instance, you may have a performance target that says you need to grow sales or grow revenue or grow market share, so that you have 20% of the stake of the market, and your whatever financial metric you're using must be at least above the median or above the average for your industry. So you are thereby somehow linked to your competitors. You are expected to get a profit percentage level this year above the average increase in profit in your industry. That's among your competitors. So you are linked to what they are doing. So on. May be linked to inflation, which is an economic indicator. You're expected to grow the business above inflation, and if inflation is 2.2%, then you're expected to at least do 2.1 or 2.2%. So those are the kind of things. So how do we monitor the standards? So we set the performance standards first. What do you need to measure? And then make sure it's realistic and achievable. So there's no need telling somebody to bring you £1 million in 1 month as sales when the person has just started work, fresh university graduate. How are they going to make that kind of sales? It's an unrealistic target, and it will demotivate rather than motivate the person to achieve it. You need to monitor performance. So how do we know that this person is actually achieving this target? We need to have check-in meetings, monthly check-ins or whatever. We need to have some evidence that you can show that these figures are entering, and so on, right? Some people monitor only exceptions, right? So they expect everybody to be hitting their performance target, so they only call into a meeting if you've gone way below or way above your target, right? Then they are trying to find out what the problem is or why you are doing so well, right? So that's management by exceptions, what people call it. And then you need to look for ways to improve performance. So you are constantly trying to improve performance in many organizations. So would be, as part of the performance management cycle, trying to identify how we can support people by improving performance, whether that be training, providing more support, more resources, increasing, if the manager and says, for me to achieve my target, I need to increase my team, I need 2 more people on my team. Then, that's the case, to increase their team. So that's the way to improve performance. So different ways to improve performance, you have to be looking at that. So now we look at the performance appraisal system. So performance management is a broad picture which we've been painting of how to link performance to reward, how to rank, how to set targets, and so on and so forth. The appraisal is the actual meeting where you sit one-on-one with your employee and discuss performance for the last month or for the last 6 months or for the last year. So that meeting you usually have will be your performance appraisal or performance review meeting. So in the performance appraisal, first of all, before we start, we normally have a first meeting where we try to set performance objectives for the year or for 6 months or whatever. We may also look back at previous performance and anticipate future issues that will affect performance in that meeting. Right? As part of the performance appraisal meeting, you may at some point also say, okay, what training and what skills are required, right, based on performance gaps or training gaps. And then you have your ongoing control and check meetings and review performance, and in some cases you may need to actually award a ranking and so on. And you can use that to determine salary, to determine bonuses, to determine training needs, and so on. So you have a series of performance appraisals ideally, but you find that many managers and employees somehow they don't tend to like these meetings, so they tend to have them not as frequently as HR would suggest they should have them. So in terms of some more practical things, obviously before you conduct your performance appraisal, you agree date and time, get a quiet room without interruptions, and it has to be private because performance is a confidential matter. You don't want other employees hearing that, oh, this person had very bad performance or poor performance just by passing by. Inform the employee about the meeting and the agenda and what you need to do at the time and date and venue and all of that, and tell them to bring any evidence they have that can support their performance, right? Whether that is feedback from clients, feedback from colleagues, financial statements, sales statements, invoices, whatever, they should come with the evidence. And then also come with some relevant documents like your job description, attendance record, things like that, that may be useful in discussing the person's performance for that period. So at the performance appraisal meeting, you remind yourselves of the objectives that are set at the first meeting or at the beginning of the year or beginning of the period, and then you start going through how those you have met and so why and so on. You need to keep notes, keep a record. Many organizations now use a computerized system, so you just enter after having the discussion and both sides, the manager and the employee agree, they can then enter the record of the meeting straight on the IT system for the company, and sign it off. The point is not to be too bureaucratic about the meeting, but to encourage a conversation, right, and have that free-flow discussion that can really be helpful to the employee and to the manager to understand what's going on and how to support the employee. There should always be time for questions. The manager should not just leave without giving the employee time for the employee to raise questions and so on, right? The manager should give constructive feedback that can help the employee. It's no good telling the employee, oh, you're very great, very great. Meanwhile, there are issues. How will the employee know there are issues that need to be tackled, right? And there's no need only focusing on the negatives without praising the employee and giving them that job satisfaction for the bits they've done well. So you need to be careful about the input in terms of feedback. At some point, you may need to agree future tasks and performance objectives, and so on, and an action plan to improve or to continue what you're doing. So some people require the notes to be signed by employees or on the system. Some organizations require that just so that they keep a track. Now, in some cases, you have employees who are underperforming, that is, they're not performing as well as expected. In many countries, like in the UK, this is regulated by employment law. You can't just sack an employee and say, oh, you're crap, you've not been doing well, without showing evidence that over time you've been recording their performance and measuring it. You'll be saying that this performance is unsatisfactory and you've done your best to support the employee to improve. If you've done those things, then you can sack the employee. But you don't just wake up one day and sack the employee and say, oh, that's bad performance. If the employee takes you to court or employment tribunal, they say, well, where was the evidence that you measured my performance? Where was the evidence that you told me this performance was not good enough, and where was the evidence that you tried to provide support and training to me to improve. So only when you've done these things and I'm still not improving despite all of this, then you can fire me. So we have to, be careful about that in terms of going through the legal process. Always give an employee an opportunity to explain on their performance. There may be mitigating circumstances. So if they're going through personal issues, maybe they lost a family member or bereaved or divorce or something like that, it's understandable. You're human beings, it can affect performance. But you will not know this except you give the employee the opportunity to discuss and to raise these issues. So you have to make sure that you give your employer opportunity and raise these issues. And sometimes you may need to support them, whether giving them time off to address family issues or referring them to occupational health or mental well-being, they're depressed or whatever, to support them through these issues, right? Remember, many of these employees are your valued talent and you don't just want to lose them. They've been doing well maybe 2-3 years. This year they're going through something is bad. If you can see them through this year, then they'll come back to excellent performance and they will even be more loyal to you because you stuck by them when things were difficult. So you have to look at it in a bigger picture, longer term frame. So if you put the person on a performance improvement plan, or called PIP or PIP, because of underperformance, it has to be clear. For the next 3 months or the next 6 months, you're expected to do and clarify what the steps are for the employee to improve performance and the standard that is expected, right? So these are the things you need to show evidence of, so that if you eventually need to fire the employee, then you can say, yes, I did my best, but this employee is just not going to improve. So in terms of employees who are doing well and you want to just improve their performance, you need to boost their confidence and just motivate them. So a lot of praise and positive feedback about what they're doing well, a lot of recognition is very important, communication is very important, very clear standards, very clear expectations, very clear targets. Make sure everybody knows what performance will be measured. Right? Not everything at work will be measured as performance, so you have to be clear that this counts towards your performance appraisal or this doesn't really count towards your performance appraisal. Right? And then hopefully you design the performance system in a way that makes the important things count. So in terms of advantages of performance appraisal, we did the SWOT analysis, I think yesterday when we looked at, was it yesterday or the session before when we looked at developing your skills audit, your personal audit of skills and knowledge and leadership competencies. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? What are your opportunities and threats? And this is obviously into the idea of performance, because you want to be able to build on your strengths, you want to be able to overcome your weaknesses. Your performance appraiser can be a source of information for your personal audit. So remember when we talked about the personal audit, we say it shouldn't be so totally based on your personal opinion or judgment of yourself. You need some more objective evidence, such as the feedback you get from your manager, from your colleagues, as part of the performance appraisal system. Right? Career planning. So based on your performance appraisal, your SWOT and so on and so forth, you can now start planning your career. Say, okay, since I'm new to this job, my performance is not yet at the peak. I need to spend 1 or 2 more years in this job, increase my confidence, increase my proficiency and competence. Then at that point, say, okay, I'm now ready for the next step of in my career. What is the next job above it, and so on, right? So performance feedback helps you plan your career, right? So sometimes you may have thought, oh, in 5 years' time, that's when I'm ready to move to the more senior role. But after 3 years, they're already getting performance feedback that says they are fully competent at this role, they are excellent at this role. In fact, they started taking on increasing responsibility, blah, blah, blah. Then you say, okay, well, I don't need to wait 5 years. It's now time to start considering applying for a step up. So performance influences career planning and then suitability of placement. So we always talk about don't put a square peg in a round hole and things like that. So a lot of people are talented, they are good, but the current job they are doing is just not a right fit for them. right? So it's not that they're bad performers, it's just that the current job doesn't match their skill set or their personality or whatever, right? So what performance does, it helps you understand your strengths and weaknesses, helps you understand what you're good at and whether this job is a right fit for you, or actually now that you've done it for 1 year or 6 months or whatever, you realize actually you are more a marketing person than a HR person. You should be in marketing department, something like that. So performance management helps in that way also. So other things, obviously performance management benefits, it helps. Personal development, self-development, we talked about this a lot, how it's part of your personal audit of skills. Use that if that's a source of information. Helps you identify the training courses, seminars and workshops and so on you need to attend to develop yourself. And then it helps the HR in the organization develop good personnel policies or good HR policies that are fair and consistent to all. It's also good for employer relations or for employment relations. Um, if it's viewed as being fair and consistent, then there's likely to be less conflict in the organization. But where the performance management puts undue stress, work intensification, or is unfair in some way, you find a lot of employees and trade unions complaining and fighting management over issues like this, right? It can boost productivity of employees as you help people improve performance, it boosts their organizational productivity and so on. Right? It's good for HR planning, workforce planning, you know who is your high talent and so on. So those are the benefits. Now in terms of some limitations, we need to be careful. Performance management, because it's human beings that are appraising, there can be some sort of bias, right? So we find this sometimes there's a gender bias, racial bias, and so on. People will give people from a certain ethnicity or race or gender a lower score or a higher score because they don't like those people that are prejudiced against them or because they favor them, right? So you have to be careful that your performance appraisal is done in a way that tends to avoid that kind of bias and discrimination and prevents that kind of thing, right? And that's why we want some objective measure. That's why we ask employees to come with evidence. We want organizations and managers to produce evidence that says, oh, this is the evidence that says sales have gone up 20% or sales have gone down 10%. Let us see the actual evidence, not based on personal opinion because of bias. We also have the biases like unconscious biases like halo effect and Hunt effect. So halo effect, there's something you like about this employee, therefore everything the employee does is excellent. So the employee may be very good with customer satisfaction. So instead of saying customer satisfaction, the performance is excellent, but when it comes to balancing accounts, when it comes to operations, warehousing or whatever, or different things, they are not that performance not that good. In this case, because there's just one measure of excellence, you think everything else is excellent about the employee. So that's like a halo effect. The opposite, a horn effect. Employee may be very good but bad in one thing, but that will overshadow everything else, and you now look at this as a totally bad employee. But actually bad in only one area, or not performing in only one area. So you have to give a more balanced, objective, and this requires training of managers to avoid this kind of bias. Where there's lack of uniform standards, and different departments in the organization have different types of standards for performance. How do you understand that someone is excellent or good or outstanding? Does they have the same meaning across different departments in the organization? So these are the things that you need for uniformity. If not, you have problems. The appraisal technique, the manager's ability to conduct those appraisal meetings and do it the way we described at the beginning. Have those conversations is important. If not, you will not have a good appraisal and so on. And then where there may be a strained relationship between the employee and the line manager, this may affect performance management, right? So you have to be careful about that. So some managers tend to avoid giving bad performance manager ratings because they're afraid of their interpersonal relationships with the employee, but they have to learn as managers that you need to be able to take tough decisions and say the truth. So those are issues. Another criticism of performance management is it can put a lot of work intensification and stress on employees, constantly asking them to improve, constantly asking them to meet targets, especially where these targets are unrealistic or not enough time and resources are provided. And then there's a problem of central tendency. Most managers tend to rate employees as average or better than average. Somehow find it difficult as human beings to rate someone that we know is our friend, we work closely with, less than average, right? And when you want to distinguish between employees and most of them are rated the same, then it becomes a problem. How do you know who are really excellent performers and underperformers and so on? Sometimes performance management is used, like we said, about like the rank and yank, about firing employees, sacking employees. So then employees are now afraid of declaring their weaknesses. Say, oh, I'm weak in this area, can I get training? They start hiding it because they feel they're being witch hunted and they only try to talk about the good side of things they're doing. So then they will not get the training they need to affect their personal development, right? And then if there's poor communication, managers don't really see employees talk with them, then after 6 months, you now suddenly want to have this performance appraisal meeting. You don't really know what's been going on, so you need some more ongoing communication to make performance management work, right? And you need to make sure that the communication is two-sided. If it's just the manager asking questions, doesn't give room for the employee to actually ask questions, also suggest things or contribute to setting their targets, then you may have problems. So we'll now look at the sources of information. So when we say how do we link performance management to your development of your personal leadership skills and knowledge, you now need to look at the different methods of performance appraisal sources of information for that. The different methods, obviously, you're not going to go through all of them. Some common ones, if you've got a performance ranking, you can use that in your personal development method. So that's where we rank employees. Paired comparisons, where we compare two employees, compare A and B. So B is better, compare B and C. So B is still better. So that way we figure out who's the best in the team. Force distribution is where you say, well, we expect 10% to be superstars, we expect 80% to be average, we expect 10% to be poor, right? And then so based on those expectations, you now go and then rank the performance ratings. But that's the problem, because you may expect only 10% to be excellent performance, but that year somehow you had very good employees. Right? You had more than 10% to be excellent, but you're only going to give 10%. So those are the problems with force distribution. So I'm not going to go through all of this, but what I want to do is concentrate on 360-degree feedback. Yeah, there we are, 360-degree feedback. So this is a very important appraisal method. So we've talked about the ranking methods and so on. And then the traditional method, one-on-one appraisal meeting between the manager and the employee, the line manager and employee. So those are important and we still use them a lot. If you are opportune to get 360-degree feedback, or if you can use that, if you can do it yourself, initiate it yourself as part of your skills audit, personal development plan, that will be very helpful. What do we mean by 360-degree feedback? 360 degrees is a round circle in mathematics, right? It's like a clock, a round clock. All the hours is a round circle. So what we mean is, if the employees are the center, they need feedback from the top, from their manager, right? Then they need feedback from the side, left and right. So those will be their fellow colleagues, team members, right? They need feedback even from employees below them, especially if they are managing employees or they have other employees who somehow are below them in structure, right? To give feedback on their leadership ability and so on. Then also we need feedback from other stakeholders like customers, if you've been in contact with customers. can we get feedback, customer satisfaction survey, and so on. So the idea is traditionally we are getting feedback or employment appraiser, employee performance appraiser only from top down. That is, from your manager will give you feedback. But the manager's view and perspective is limited. You've interacted with team members, in fact, more than with your land manager. You've interacted with customers and people from other departments in your organization, employees below you, and so on. So we want to have a holistic picture of all of this, right? So we'll ask for feedback on you from all the sources around you rather than just from the top. That's what we call 360-degree feedback. Very, very good for personal development, very good to give a balanced view of an employee's performance, very good to identify training needs and so on for self-awareness. And where your organization has it and you can get all of this feedback, fine, you can use in your personal skills audit. If not, you may need to source it. You may need to ask people higher than you, below you, beside you, customers, people in other departments, say, can you write a short email telling me about your, my performance in the last 6 months and what you think I've done well, what you think you think I can improve. Just those 2 simple questions, and people will give you feedback if possible. Right. So that's what we mean by 360-degree feedback, and it gives a more balanced view, and it tends to also remove this issue of bias, harms, and halo effect, prejudice, and discrimination and things, because you have more people, involved in the process. So less chance of one person's bias positively or negatively affecting you. Right. So those are the key areas of performance review, performance appraisal, and that's how you can link it to your own personal development. Any questions?
Well, it's clear, and I've gone through performance appraisal myself as well. It's very similar.
Okay.
The 360-degree one is very helpful, I think. You're right. It gives a holistic view. So, thank you. It's very clear.
All right. Thank you very much. Hopefully, we ask them to schedule a coursework support session so that we can look at the coursework for this unit, the assignment for this unit, and also the unit indicators and learning outcomes, which help you, in answering the assignment and so on. All right. So thank you very much, and have a nice day.
All right. Bye.